What's up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be talking about the top 3 things that I think Ford got wrong when designing and building their newest and smallest pickup truck, the all-new Ford Maverick. Before we get into it though, guys, I've got a couple quick disclaimers for you. Disclaimer number 1, I myself own a 2022 Ford Maverick XLT with the EcoBoost 2-liter turbo engine, the 4K towing package, as well as the FX4 off-road all-wheel drive package. I've got almost 10,000 miles on the truck so far, so I've got quite a bit of experience driving and using this vehicle in several different circumstances and types of conditions, and that's what I'm going to be basing the information in this video today off of. Disclaimer number 2, the Maverick was specifically designed, built, advertised, and sold to be a cheap and affordable vehicle, meaning that a lot of the components and materials that were used in the construction of the Maverick are cheap. Honestly, that's not a big deal because that's how Ford was able to offer us such a cheap vehicle starting under $20,000. And by doing it any other way, you could not offer a truck at that low of a price. But using those cheap materials and that cheap labor and cheap components results in some minor quality control issues that are honestly to be expected. So nothing that we talk about in this video is going to be directly related to those minor quality control issues. A couple that come to mind right off the bat that owners are finding and reporting, chipping and cracking of the paint, the plastic components inside that make up the interior of the cab, and then of course probably the most common one is the entertainment system. The touchscreen has a tendency to kind of freeze up on some owners, but we're not going to focus on those for the purpose of this video. We're going to get into those on a future video that you guys can hang out and wait for. And finally, disclaimer number 3, I absolutely love my Maverick and I wouldn't trade it in for any other truck right now, even though I probably could due to how high the resale value on these trucks still is. But with that being said, this video is in no way intended to bash the Maverick overall as a vehicle. I think it's a fantastic vehicle. I love mine. But the point of this video is just to point out a few minor flaws that I think Ford has a chance to improve upon in future generations and model years of the truck. Alright, let's dive into this, guys. Top 3 things that I think Ford got wrong when designing and building the all-new 2022 Ford Maverick. Number 3, the single-piece rear bench-style seat that they installed in these trucks. This has been a major complaint amongst Maverick owners since the release of the first couple Mavericks coming off the line early last year. There's absolutely no doubt that the Maverick is tiny compared to pretty much every other pickup truck on the market in the United States right now. But Ford did a great job at maximizing the amount of storage space in the interior of this truck, with probably the coolest and most unique feature being the underseat storage under the rear passenger bench. Having this underseat storage compartment in the back is really cool and something that a lot of vehicles don't have, and it allows you to discreetly store pretty much whatever you want. Groceries, camping gear, and whatever else can fit inside. There's only one problem, however, and that's the fact that the entire rear bench on the Maverick is all one piece, instead of split up into 2 separate opening sections like a lot of other vehicles have. And it's unfortunate because having that design feature takes this extremely cool and extremely useful storage compartment and renders it a lot less convenient and a lot less useful in most cases. And the problem only gets worse and more inconvenient when you take into account people like myself and a lot of other Maverick owners that have children and by extension car seats that have to be mounted to that rear bench. Opening that rear bench with a car seat still strapped on top is pretty much next to impossible, which makes it very, very difficult to retrieve or stow goods that you want to put in that storage compartment underneath the car seat, which means that if you want to do that, you have to remove the entire car seat and then strap it back down every single time. And those of you guys that have kids know what a pain in the butt that is, and it only gets worse and worse as the car seats get bigger and bigger, which in turn causes you to not use that storage compartment as much, or at least it has for me. And that's really a bummer because you're basically forfeiting one of the coolest options that you have on the interior of these trucks by not having a split opening design like most other vehicles have. Because the Maverick was mainly advertised as an entry-level truck for young families that are probably going to have kids as well as first-time truck buyers, I think that this is something that Ford really overlooked and something that they should have taken into more careful consideration when designing the back seat for the Maverick. So why would Ford make the decision to install this single piece rear bench in the rear of the truck rather than a split seat? Most likely it was done for cost reasons and to be able to make the truck just that much more affordable like many other components of the truck. And while I appreciate them doing this and, you know, in turn being able to offer the Maverick at such an affordable price to people like myself, it's also something that I don't think would have cost that much more to change, and something that I really think should be on future generations of the Maverick. While I obviously don't have like any definitive costs of what it would take to do a split bench in the rear versus the single bench, I don't think it would cost that much. Obviously there would be a little bit more in labor costs. I don't know if Ford is using you know, actual hand stitching to put the seats together. Most likely they're using automation to stitch the seats, which would, you know, make it that much faster and probably not make it such a big deal. But obviously the cost would mostly come from the additional components needed. There's probably going to be a couple more square feet of fabric to make those separate cushions. There's going to be at least 2 more hinges and 2 more latches as well. So most likely the cost of putting a split seat in the rear of the truck would raise the price just a little bit, but I don't think it would really be that much. However, I do think that the cost difference could definitely very easily be made up in maybe offering this as an additional add-on that if you want it, you can add it to your order, and if you don't, you can leave it as a single bench seat. But that would at least give people the option for maybe an extra couple $100 if you want that split bench seat, which a lot of people do. You could at least add it to the truck, and that cost would be covered for Ford. The other thing that I think, you know, Ford should look at as a possibility is, hey, maybe if you are doing this single bench seat in the back as a cost-cutting solution to keep the truck ultra cheap and affordable, maybe on your, you know, super basic trim level XLs, where the entire point is to make it literally as cheap as possible so people can afford it, maybe leave that as a single bench seat, and on the XLT and the Lariat, maybe add the split seat in the back so you can actually get the most use out of it, because XLT and Lariat owners are already paying extra and showing that they're willing to pay that extra cost to get you know, the better amenities and the things that they want that make their life more convenient while owning the truck. Either way, I think that this is one small thing that Ford could do that would make a huge difference to a lot of Maverick owners and really benefit pretty much everybody that buys this truck. So I think it's something that Ford should definitely consider in future model years and generations of the Maverick. Number 2, Ford's choice of all-terrain tire on the FX4 package. Now obviously this one is only going to apply to FX4 equipped trucks, but that's what I have, so that's what I'm basing my experiences off of, and I think there's a lot of room for improvement on this one. Up until the announcement of the 2023 Maverick Tremor Package, the FX4 package was the cream of the crop, most off-road capable package that you were able to apply to your Maverick, and it takes the otherwise modest Maverick and gives it a lot more grit and a lot more capability off-road. But again, there's just one minor problem, and that is the tires that Ford chose to equip on the FX4 Mavericks. They are branded as an all-terrain tire, making the truck a lot more off-road capable, and unfortunately they are far from such. And if you guys are interested in learning more about that, I actually recently did a full video detailing those stock tires and switching them over to new tires, comparing the two, and it really shows you how bad these stock Pirelli Scorpion ATRs that come on the FX4 package really are. So I'm going to link that down in the description, or you can check it out up here at the top of your screen. I highly recommend you guys check that video out as well. But anyway, the stock tires that Ford chose to put on the FX4 package are the Pirelli Scorpion ATR in a 225/65/17 size, and just looking at them right off the bat visually, they look pretty lame and they look pretty weird for an all-terrain off-road tire. The tread is just really smooth. There's no off-road tread whatsoever. There's no sidewall, and really it's just a street pattern. And don't get me wrong, these tires are fantastic on the street. Even in wet, slippery conditions, they do pretty well in my experience. But as soon as you get them off-road, even in the most subtle off-roading conditions, they do not perform, and they are just extremely disappointing. They offer literally no traction whatsoever, and they, in my opinion, really hinder the total potential that this truck has. I was really impressed with the intelligent all-wheel drive system that's offered in the Mavericks. It does really well at finding its way and navigating through obstacles like sand pits, climbing up over stuff, wet, loose leaves, that kind of thing. It does a really good job, and you have all of these really cool drive modes like sand, mud and ruts, slippery, and unfortunately these tires that don't have any off-road capability really put a damper on the overall potential that the Maverick does have and that you could be enjoying if it just had a little bit better tire on it. In that other video that I filmed that I just mentioned to you guys a few seconds ago, I swapped those tires out for the Pirelli Scorpion All-Terrain Plus, which is the upgraded version of that stock tire that has a lot more tread and some sidewall, and the improvement was drastic. It made all the difference and made the Maverick so much more off-road capable. And again, I highly recommend you guys check that video out if that's something that you're interested in seeing. So why in the world would Ford offer this FX4 off-road package and then take this crappy street tire and put it on it? That makes literally no sense whatsoever. The likely reason that Ford made this decision is most likely, once again, the cost of the vehicle and trying to make it as cheap as possible so consumers can afford it. And then of course there's the entire other side of why this truck was even built in the first place, and that's because of its fuel efficiency, and adding a more off-road capable tire also reduces your fuel efficiency. So that's probably the two biggest factors that Ford was really looking at when deciding what tire to put on this truck. However, assuming that these two reasons are the reasons that Ford decided to go with the ATR as a stock tire for the FX4 package, I do have a couple complaints and a couple issues with that decision. The first issue being cost. So when looking at Pirelli's website, the Scorpion ATR starts at about $151, meaning a square set would be about $600. That's not too bad, but when you scroll down a little bit and you look at the Scorpion All-Terrain Plus tire, which is the more aggressive option geared more towards off-road use, it actually has a cheaper starting price than the ATR tire. Now, of course, as you go up in sizes, up to the 225, 65, 17 that the Mavericks ended up with, obviously they're going to be a little bit more expensive, but when you look at that size in both of these tires, it's actually quite comparable. And then there's the entire aspect that Ford, because they're buying so many tires in bulk in giant quantities from Pirelli, they're likely getting them at an extremely discounted rate. So by putting the Scorpion All-Terrain Plus on versus the ATR, there probably wouldn't have been that much of a cost difference from Pirelli. But even if adding the Scorpion All-Terrain Plus tires to the truck did add some kind of additional cost, FX4 buyers are already spending that extra money to get the FX4 package, which shows that they can afford it and they're willing to spend that money, which is considerably more than a non-FX4 truck, to get those off-road features that they want. So that just really goes to show that adding just a little bit more cost per unit to produce, if it adds that much more capability to the truck, is something that I think a lot of FX4 buyers would honestly appreciate, and they really wouldn't mind spending those couple extra dollars to get an actual tire that really opens up the full benefits and the full potential of the Maverick. And then of course there's the other aspect of this, which is the fuel economy of the truck, and it's definitely possible that Ford chose to put the ATR tire on versus the All-Terrain Plus tire on the FX4 package in order to preserve some type of fuel efficiency with the Maverick. However, I have a problem with this too, because it's common knowledge, especially with people that have, already been familiar with off-roading and off-road tires, that adding a off-road tire to a vehicle is automatically going to reduce the fuel economy. And most people that are ordering the FX4 package that want that off-road capability are completely okay with a slightly diminished fuel economy out of the truck, so long as they get the added benefits of those off-road capabilities. Just by the simple act of ordering that FX4 off-road package in the first place, a lot of Maverick owners have already showed that their priorities lie with the ability to take this truck off-road and do more with it than it does with the fuel economy. And if they wanted fuel economy, if that was the major reason that they were buying this truck, they would have ordered a hybrid or even a front-wheel drive EcoBoost that is far superior in fuel efficiency than the all-wheel drive model in the first place. Now, the other side of this is I've actually tested this, which again you can see in that video that I shared with you guys a few minutes ago. And by putting the Scorpion All-Terrain Plus on the truck versus the stock ATR, I only dropped about 1 mile per gallon on average, and I've done quite a bit of driving since switching those tires. And on the highway, when I go only highway and I reset that odometer, you know, the trip odometer, I'm still getting 27 to 28 miles a gallon on the highway with that new Scorpion AT Plus tire on the truck, which is very, very good, especially for a truck, and double especially for the least fuel efficient build possible for that specific truck. In my opinion, the Scorpion AT Plus tire is the tire that probably should have been the tire that Ford chose to put stock on the FX4 Mavericks. Now, obviously there's a lot of other options out there. Right now, a ton of people are really liking the Falcon Wild Peaks as well as the KO2s on the Maverick. Those are great options, but they do have a more aggressive tread, so that is going to further diminish your fuel economy. I have seen some numbers from several people showing like 4, 5, 6 miles per gallon decrease. So going that route might not have been the best option, at least stock from the factory, for Ford to do. But I think adding a slightly more aggressive and slightly more capable off-road tire like the Scorpion All-Terrain Plus would have probably been ideal and really opened up more benefits and more potential for the Maverick, and really given FX4 customers what they actually wanted in the first place and what they really thought they were paying for. And finally, the number one thing that I think Ford got wrong when designing the all-new Maverick. And this is actually going to be a combination of a couple different things that we're just going to group all into one category. So the first one is going to be the ride height of the front end of the truck. The second one is going to be the overall shape and the design of the lower section of the front bumper. And the third category is going to be whatever the hell all this weird plastic crap is hanging off the front of the truck. Alright, so let's get started with the ride height of the front end of the Maverick, and more specifically how it sits considerably lower than the rear end of the truck. This is another one of those things that since the Maverick first started rolling off the assembly line, people have been complaining about because it just really doesn't make any sense. Well, kind of. First of all, it just looks kind of weird, like something's not quite right in the front end of the truck. It sits low and it's at this weird nose heavy angle, and it's not very appealing to a lot of people. But more specifically for me, what I really take issue with is not necessarily the visual aspect, but it's the actual functionality that this design trait of the Maverick actually has. So why would Ford design the front end of the truck to sit lower than the rear end? If I had to guess, the most likely reason for this is probably some type of fuel efficiency and aerodynamic benefit that having the front end at that specific angle probably makes for the truck, which makes complete sense and is a welcome benefit when you're talking about the hybrid and even the front-wheel drive EcoBoost models of the Maverick, whose main goal and really why people are buying them is to be a fuel-efficient family grocery getter. However, for me, the issues really start arising when we start talking about the all-wheel drive and the FX4 equipped variants of the Maverick. As we've already talked about, people who are buying the FX4 and the all-wheel drive versions of the Maverick care a lot less about losing a couple miles per gallon than they do not having the ability to take their truck off-road, which is the main reason that they're paying all that extra money for the FX4 package in the first place. The front end of the truck sits extremely low to the ground, which I'm sure, as you can imagine, causes some significant issues when trying to drive the truck on even the most minor off-road conditions. And in fact, the front end of the truck actually sits so low to the ground that on a perfectly level parking lot, if you pull up too far into a parking spot, the front end will actually hit the curb. That's how low the front of this truck sits compared to the rear end. Like I said previously, that's fine for the variants of the truck whose main goal is fuel efficiency, but on a truck whose partial goal is fuel efficiency, but really why people are buying this truck with the FX4 package is to do some like minor to medium off-roading, it just doesn't make sense to have the front end of the truck sitting this low to the ground, because it just makes the truck so much less capable of being able to navigate through even the most minor of off-road conditions. And then, aside from fuel efficiency, like we've already talked about in the previous points of this video, the other reason this was probably done is most likely because of the cost benefit of adding this suspension to it that they didn't really have to do much to, and it probably helped lower the overall price of the Maverick. Just like we've already discussed in the previous issue of the tires, it's highly likely that most people ordering the FX4 package would be fine with a couple hundred extra bucks tacked on if it meant they get the added benefit of being able to use this truck off-road. So I'm not gonna beat a dead horse, we've already talked about that one, but I also find it very likely that adding a better front suspension to this truck could have been done without adding that much extra cost to the overall per unit price. Ford already designed an upgraded suspension that they're installing on FX4 models of the truck, and only FX4 models. So this is a suspension that they had to develop separately from the regular suspensions on the rest of the trucks, specifically for this model. So while they were developing that suspension for the FX4 specifically, why didn't they just go ahead and make the front end taller and equal it out with the rear end so you get that extra off-road capability? That probably could have been done for very minimal added cost, since they were already creating this brand new suspension for the FX4 anyway. Another potential option that I thought of too is upgraded suspension for this platform already existed when the Maverick came out, in the sense that the Bronco Sport and the Maverick are both built on the same platform. Now, while I recognize that the Bronco Sport suspension is not the same as the Maverick suspension, it will not directly swap over, it's very, very similar in design for the same platform. So is it possible that maybe Ford could have redeveloped the already existing Bronco Sport suspension from some of the more cool off-road capable trim models that they offer for the Sport, and kind of redeveloped them specifically for the FX4 Mavericks? That's definitely a possibility, and I don't really know too much about that. If we're being honest, that's kind of like out of my realm of what I know. So if you guys have any insight into, you know, if that could have been done, and maybe like what the cost of doing something like that would actually come out to, because obviously there's probably going to be some design costs and extra materials and that kind of thing. So definitely let me know what you guys think on that one. Just some food for thought, but kind of an interesting solution, if I do say so myself. And then finally, probably the simplest and most easy, basic solution that Ford could have done to lift the front end of the FX4 equipped Mavericks is just put a spacer in the front suspension. They're simple, they're dirt cheap. Companies like Rough Country are already making these things for literally $100. You can go online and order a 1-inch spacer for the front end of your Maverick for $100. That's how dirt cheap this solution is. So I think that Ford really could have done more with the front suspension on the Maverick, and even if it was just putting a $100 spacer in and jacking the price of the FX4 package up to $200 to cover the cost, I'm sure that most consumers would happily pay that extra little price difference on the already expensive FX4 package to get that front end lift that the FX4 like desperately needs to be a much more off-road capable vehicle. The second part of this that I want to talk about is the overall design of the lower section of the front bumper, and how low to the ground it is, and how it really affects the overall angle of attack that you're able to have coming into off-road obstacles, and how it really hinders the off-road abilities of the truck, especially when paired with how low the front suspension is in the first place anyway. And guys, this one is pretty self-explanatory. It's too low to the ground, and it really needs to be more angled versus just kind of straight up and down like it currently is on the FX4 package. And honestly, the way that the new 2023 Tremor Package is designed, with that angled front lower bumper that's also lifted quite a ways off the ground when compared to the FX4, is really how the bumper on the FX4 should have been designed in the first place anyway. Again, on the hybrid models and the front wheel drive EcoBoost, it doesn't really matter. You're not going to be doing any kind of like serious off-roading with those models, but on the FX4 package that's specifically geared towards a more off-road usable truck, it really only makes sense to lift that front bumper a little bit and give the truck that much more capability. And now that the Tremor package exists, it would be really cool to see the front bumper from the Tremor adopted onto the FX4 package as well, giving it just that much more versatility. And then finally, I think it's worth mentioning all the low-hanging plastic crap underneath the front bumper. The skid plate that comes on the FX4 package on the underside of the nose is awesome. It does a great job at protecting your engine and protecting your intercooler from rocks and bouncing over obstacles and that kind of thing. But again, it's just too low to the ground, and it's designed in a way where it really reduces the angle of attack that you can come into obstacles with that truck. Where if it was more angled, you could come into steeper obstacles and get those front tires to hit before the front bumper of the truck digs into the ground, which is exactly what happens on the FX4 package. Again, also partially because of how low the front suspension is. With all these things paired together though, it creates a real problem for any kind of minor off-roading that you want to do. Also, whatever the hell these things are that hang down in front of the wheels, I don't even know what these would be for. I was thinking like mud flaps, kind of, but they're on the front side of the wheel well, so it doesn't really make sense. So maybe they have some kind of like aerodynamic efficiency, moving air around the tires. I don't really know, but on the FX4 package, it just doesn't make any sense to have low-hanging plastic in front of the front wheels of the truck. It doesn't make sense, and honestly, those just need to be completely removed. Luckily, they're held on with only a few bolts, so you can pop them off real easily, and I highly recommend doing that. In conclusion, no matter how dramatic I make this sound, guys, these are all really minor things and nothing that should really deter you from purchasing a Maverick, and especially purchasing the FX4 package, because it really is worth it. I love mine, but these things that we've talked about in the video are definitely things that I think could be improved upon, and things that I would like to see improved upon in future model years and generations as the Maverick kind of develops over the next several years and is refined every year more and more. But with that being said, I still can't help but think, why wouldn't Ford make these changes in the first place when designing the truck and just make it a much more capable truck? And I know what most of you guys are probably thinking right now. The new 2023 Tremor package that's now available for the Mavericks offers almost every single thing that I've talked about in this video, minus the split rear bench as far as I'm concerned. Let me know if I'm wrong on that. So why wouldn't you just buy the Tremor package as opposed to the FX4 package if you want all of these cool additional features that you're literally saying you want right now? Well, the Tremor package is badass. Like, I'm gonna say that straight up. It's a sick little truck, but that's not to say that the Tremor package also doesn't come with its various issues. First of all, the Tremor package costs considerably more than the FX4 package. So this isn't really like a huge deal breaker. I'm sure a lot of people would still happily shell out that cash to get that off-road capability. So in and of itself, the added cost isn't a deal breaker for a lot of people. But the big problem for me, and a lot of people I've heard say this, you can't add the 4K towing package to the Maverick Tremors. And the payload capacity for the bed is actually reduced quite a bit as well, as far as the information that I can find. So you end up paying more for the Tremor package, and while you get that off-road capability, you lose all the other utility of being able to tow, as well as being able to put that payload in the bed. As far as the research I've done, you lose about 300 pounds of payload capacity in the bed, and the towing capacity without the option to put the 4K tow on diminishes by 50%, meaning that the Maverick Tremor is 50% less capable in towing than the FX4 equipped truck with the 4K tow package, and it only can tow up to 2,000 pounds, which is not a lot whatsoever. And while the truck is badass for off-road, now what has happened is consumers are being put in this position where, well, do I want the off-road capability at the cost of towing capacity, or do I want a little bit more versatile truck where I can tow 4,000 pounds, but I don't have all of these cool off-road features that the Tremor has? And I think that that's a really difficult position for a lot of consumers to be in, especially when you look at the price point of the Tremor and how much more expensive it is. It becomes less appealing to a lot of people when they find out you can't tow and you can't put as much in the bed as you can on an FX4 4K tow equipped Maverick, which will probably cost less. Personally, I really think that taking some of the more simple upgrades that they did to the Tremor package and applying them to the FX4 package could be really beneficial and create a much more versatile truck, combining the best of the off-road capabilities and the towing capacity and the payload capacity that the FX4 4K also offers, and in turn creating a much more appealing truck to a much wider variety of potential purchasers. Now, of course, the problem that you could run into by doing this is creating two trucks that are too similar and therefore competing with each other, but I don't think that that would happen in this case, because the Tremor would still be a significantly upgraded off-road option with putting those twin clutches back there, kind of like how the Bronco Sport has, and really making it a much more off-road capable truck. You can lock it in four-wheel drive, and the intelligent all-wheel drive system is drastically upgraded from the FX4, and it can handle a lot more severe off-road conditions compared to that FX4 package. So I don't think that by taking some of those simple attributes like the front bumper and maybe a 1-inch lift and putting them on the FX4 would really create two competing trucks. I really think that what they would end up with is a much more desirable FX4, as well as still having an extremely desirable and really cool Maverick Tremor edition. Or is it possible that Ford is specifically not offering these options on the FX4 equipped Mavericks, specifically because they knew that the following year they would be releasing a Tremor package for the Maverick and they want people to spend more money and buy the Tremor package? I don't know, guys, but I am interested in hearing what you guys think on the matter, and I am interested in knowing if you guys agree with the points that I made today or if you disagree. So either way, let me know down in the comments. I'm excited to hear from you guys. But other than that, I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider subscribing and liking the video. And stay tuned, guys, because I have a lot more Maverick content coming up here very, very soon. If you're interested, you can check out the video that I mentioned earlier. It'll be linked down in the description. And in that video, that's actually the first episode of the Overland build on the Maverick. We're going to be doing a full rooftop tent setup with a whole bunch of other cool stuff. If you guys are interested in following along with that, again, definitely subscribe so you don't miss out. Hit the little bell, that way you're notified the second I post a new video. And other than that, guys, if you want to support the channel just a little bit more, I'd appreciate it. Check out my merch or check out my Patreon page for exclusive benefits. Links will be down in the description. Other than that, I appreciate each and every one of you guys so much. Stay safe, get out there, go on an adventure, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.